They're letting pregnant women serve now? What's next? Toddlers taking orders?
Billionaire mocked a pregnant waitress. But what happened next? You won't believe how fast the tables turned. Stay locked in, because this story, it doesn't end the way you think. Savannah Carter never imagined her life would look like this, pregnant, exhausted, and dodging stares from strangers as she balanced 3 plates on a single arm. At 26, she'd once been the kind of girl who dreamed in color. Manuscripts, book signings, her name in bold across store windows. But those dreams were now folded somewhere between overdue rent notices and her mother's latest hospital scans. Reality had a cruel way of silencing the loudest ambitions. The morning shift bled into the evening one at Bellagio Prime, Manhattan's sleek glass and marble restaurant where power dined, and people like her simply blended into the background. Waitresses were expected to be invisible unless something went wrong. And today, her feet ached so badly it felt like her bones might splinter. Still, she moved like clockwork, her black flats worn thin, her uniform stretched awkwardly around her swollen belly. 7 months along, and every step felt like her body reminding her she was carrying more than just a baby. She was carrying the weight of betrayal. Her ex, Mason, had vanished the moment he saw the ultrasound. No goodbye. No explanation. One day, they were picking out baby names. The next, he ghosted her like she'd been a mistake, and she had no time to cry about it. Between her mom's prescriptions and a mountain of debt, Savannah had learned how to cry quietly, if at all. Every now and then she'd catch her reflection in the mirrored wine shelf, cheeks a little hollower, lips chapped, eyes still fiery, even if dulled by fatigue. She hated the pitying looks from customers, hated the whispering. The pregnancy was visible, yes, but so was something else. Her refusal to fall apart. She held herself with a kind of cracked pride, the kind that only forms when survival becomes an art. When the hostess asked her to serve a high-profile VIP table that evening, Savannah straightened her spine, brushed her curls back into a bun, and forced a smile. She didn't know whose table it was, just that he tipped well. That was all that mattered. Tips meant dinner, tips meant cab fare, tips meant the hospital didn't call again saying her mother's room couldn't be held without payment. What? Savannah didn't know, as she pulled her notepad from her apron and approached the table, was that tonight wasn't just another shift. It was the night everything in her life would take a sharp, public, humiliating turn and set off a chain of events she never could have written, even in her wildest first draft. Damien Holt's world ran on power, perception, and profit, usually in that order. At 39, he was the face of Holt Media Group, a multi-billion-dollar publishing empire built by his father's steel jaw and his mother's ice-cold diplomacy. Damien had inherited both, plus the charm to make destruction look like elegance. He didn't just walk into rooms, he shifted gravity. Eyes followed him, voices lowered, and behind every compliment was a carefully veiled calculation. Everyone wanted something from Damien Holt, and he liked it that way. He'd learned early on that apologies were currency the rich couldn't afford to waste. So he stopped making them. The motto etched in his psyche, never apologize, never explain, had carried him through scandal after scandal, nightclubs, heiresses, lawsuits. He had an entire legal team dedicated solely to cleaning up what he called the cost of living fast. NDAs were drafted so frequently, one paralegal joked they should be printed on napkins. His penthouse overlooked Central Park, but he never really looked at it. The view wasn't there for him. It was for guests, through envy. Truth was, Damien lived in a museum of curated taste. Designer art, vintage whiskey, furniture so expensive it came with a backstory, and still nothing in it ever really felt his. The rooms were immaculate, yet hollow. Every morning the cleaning crew left behind a place so sterile, so quiet, it echoed. Women came and went, each more glamorous than the last, but none ever got close. The last one who tried walked out sobbing after Damien told her mid-breakfast that love was a transaction. His assistant had the exit plan ready before the toast even cooled. He wasn't cruel. He was efficient. Emotions were liabilities. And liabilities cost money. Yet despite the bravado and bulletproof image, something lingered behind Damien's sharp eyes. A flicker, a weight, the residue of a mistake buried deep under contracts and headlines. The Miami incident, that night, blurred. By champagne and instinct, he never thought about it. Not really. Just enough to keep the guilt from catching its breath. And then there was his attitude towards service workers, those he considered part of the scenery. He didn't hate them, he just didn't see them. Waiters, drivers, receptionists. They existed, to serve, to fade. He never remembered names, he barely made eye contact. To him, they were functions, background noise. Until that night at Bellagio Prime, because sometimes the one person you treat like they're nothing ends up holding the one truth you can't afford to ignore. Savannah had served hundreds of tables before, but something about this one rattled her. Maybe it was the hush that fell over the restaurant the moment he walked in. Maybe it was the way the manager practically tripped over himself, escorting the man to the VIP booth. Or maybe, just maybe, it was the cold weight of his stare as she approached with a pitcher of sparkling water balanced carefully in her hand. Damien Holt didn't look at her like a person. He looked at her like a blemish on an otherwise perfect evening. "Water for the table?" she asked softly, setting down the first glass. That's when it happened. The pitcher slipped. Not a lot, just enough for a single splash to leap onto the edge of his pristine cuff. Time seemed to slow, gasps followed, and then his voice, sharp, amused, cutting. "Do they let anyone in here now?" he said loudly, brushing his sleeve like it was contaminated. "Pregnant and clumsy. What's next? Will I be served by toddlers next week?" Laughter erupted around the table. Harsh, performative. Damien didn't stop. "Seriously, who hires someone like that to handle anything breakable? I come here to forget stress, not be reminded of poor life choices." Savannah stood frozen, her heart slamming inside her chest. Her hand trembled, but she didn't drop the pitcher. Her cheeks burned, eyes blurred, but she didn't let a single tear fall. Instead, she gave a small nod, gently set the pitcher down, and turned away, never once looking back. Not even when someone from the next booth muttered, "Damn." That was too far. What no one noticed, except one quiet teen seated with his parents, was the glowing phone pointed discreetly at the table the entire time. By the time Savannah got off her shift and sat quietly on the subway, her phone buzzed. Non-stop. At first, she ignored it. Then she opened one message from her coworker. "Girl, you're going viral." She clicked the link. The video was crystal clear. Damien's voice, the laughter, her silence, all of it captured, framed with a caption, "Billionaire mocks pregnant waitress. Watch her response." And her response, "Grace under fire," but the internet was fire now. And it was coming for Damien Holt. 3 months earlier, the air in Miami pulsed with heat and elegance. A towering hotel overlooking the ocean glittered with chandeliers and champagne flutes. Inside, the annual Visionary Voices Gala was in full swing, an extravagant night that pulled in celebrities, CEOs, and heirs too rich for last names. Savannah wasn't on the guest list. She was there in black slacks, a white blouse, and a catering badge clipped to her apron. A hired hand, but that night, something was different. She felt light, like the storm cloud that usually hovered over her had drifted for once. She'd had her first full meal in days, her nausea had eased, and the beach air had given her a glow that makeup couldn't fake. 7 weeks pregnant, and still adjusting, she hadn't told anyone yet, not even her mom. That night, she wanted to feel invisible in a good way. Just float. Damien Holt, meanwhile, had no intention of being seen. He'd arrived through a back entrance, dodging flashing cameras and ducking behind security. A minor PR crisis was unraveling back in New York, an ex's tell-all threatening to make headlines by dawn. His assistant told him to skip the event, but Damien didn't listen. He never did. He needed to breathe, to drink, and to be no one, even just for a moment. Their first interaction was by sheer accident. Savannah had been carrying a silver tray of flutes through the side corridor near the ballroom when he stumbled into her. Literally, she caught him mid-trip, their eyes locked. "You okay, sir?" she asked, breath caught somewhere between concern and confusion. He smirked, eyes a little glassy. "Depends who's asking." "Just the catering staff," she replied with a small smile, steadying him by the elbow. "Then I must be in good hands," he said. There was no arrogance in his tone that night, no cruelty, just a strange calm, a need to not be Damien Holt for a few hours, and Savannah, unaware of his name, let him. They found themselves talking by the back balcony where the breeze cooled the sweat behind her neck. He talked about how loud life was. She talked about silence, about writing, about dreams she wasn't sure she was allowed to have anymore. They were both pretending for a while, two strangers hiding inside a moment. 1 hour turned into 2. A lingering touch on the arm turned into fingers brushing against her cheek. A kiss, hesitant but undeniable, followed by a night that neither fully planned. It wasn't reckless. It was human, impulsive, soulful. And when she woke up alone, the next morning in the hotel suite, there was no note, no name. Just a memory and a faint soreness that felt more like an echo than regret. She returned to her life, carrying more than just memory now. A heartbeat. And Damien. He moved on, never once connecting the dots, never imagining the woman from that night would ever cross his orbit again. So when he saw Savannah standing by his table at Bellagio Prime, 7 months pregnant, eyes briefly flashing something familiar, he didn't flinch. He didn't recognize her. But she remembered everything. By morning, the video had breached every corner of the internet. What began as a shaky 30-second clip captured by a teenager became the spark that lit a full-blown media wildfire. Twitter, TikTok, news outlets, even international platforms picked it up. Billionaire mocks pregnant waitress became the headline glued to Damien Holt's name. Within hours, hashtags trended worldwide. Grace over greed. Pregnant not powerless. Cancel Holt. Feminist groups rallied in waves. Influencers uploaded tearful reaction videos, dissecting the cruelty with slow-motion breakdowns. Talk shows debated the deeper issues: power, misogyny, economic disparity. Even comedians took jabs at Damien's sleaze-in-a-suit performance. And through it all, Savannah's silence became its own kind of power. She hadn't said a word publicly. She didn't have to, because then came the photo. Someone had snapped it just seconds after the humiliation. Savannah, walking away from the table, head held high, chin trembling but unbowed, her apron stained, her belly visible, her dignity intact. The photo exploded across social feeds with a caption that couldn't have been written better by a poet. She served with grace. He served cruelty. It was retweeted by celebrities, blasted across digital billboards in Times Square. Overnight, Savannah became a symbol, unwilling maybe, but undeniable. Her story resonated with millions who had been mocked, dismissed, silenced. She was all of them. And the world was listening. Back at Holt Media headquarters, the walls were cracking. Brand partners pulled out of projects. Magazine covers were postponed. His board demanded damage control. Damien's PR team issued a statement within 24 hours. Mr. Holt sincerely apologizes for his comments and takes full responsibility, but the apology wasn't a video. It wasn't even signed. It read like it had been churned out of a crisis management template, and people saw through it. The backlash doubled. And Damien, he was furious, not at the press, not even at the sponsors. He was furious at her, at the woman who didn't raise her voice, didn't post a thing, and still managed to dismantle everything. But beneath the fury, something strange crept in. Curiosity. There was something about her that lingered. The way she didn't crumble. The fire in her eyes before she turned away. And if he was being honest, something else haunted him too. Her face. Something about it tugged at memory. He couldn't quite place it. But part of him knew. He'd seen that face before. It was nearly midnight when Savannah clocked into her second job at the 24-hour diner on East 52nd. The air smelled like grease and black coffee. Her back ached, her ankles throbbed, and all she wanted was to survive the next 8 hours in peace. But peace was a luxury she hadn't had in weeks, not since her face went viral, not since the world chose sides, and one man chose silence. She was wiping down a booth when the bell above the door jingled. At first, she didn't look up. The diner stayed half full with night shift regulars and insomnia-driven stragglers. But the atmosphere shifted. Conversations dropped into whispers. The air thickened. Then she heard the shoes. Slow, deliberate, expensive. She turned, and there he was, Damien Holt, in her world again. This time without bodyguards, without photographers, without his smug entourage. Just him, in a black overcoat, collar turned up, eyes locked on her with an intensity that didn't match the polite clink of spoons in coffee mugs around them. "You've been busy," he said, voice low, controlled. She didn't blink. "Can I help you, sir?" "Oh, cut the act," he snapped. "You think I don't see what this is? You set me up." She tilted her head. "Set you up? You humiliated me in front of an entire restaurant, and the world just watched." His jaw tightened. "You've milked it for all it's worth. Who told you to leak the video? Is this about money?" Savannah's eyes darkened. Her voice dropped to a whisper that could still cut glass. "You think this is about a viral video? Damien, we've met before, you just don't remember." A pause. He blinked, thrown off. "Miami," she continued. "The Visionary Gala. 3 months ago. Balcony. Back hallway. Room 1407. Silence. Slammed into him like a freight train. Savannah stepped closer, folding her arms over her stomach. Still drawing a blank, "You stumbled into me, reeking of scotch and secrets. Told me you wanted to disappear for a night. And you did." His lips parted, but no words came out. "You didn't give your name," she added, eyes locked on his. "But you gave me something else." His eyes dropped, finally seeing the curve of her belly with a new kind of clarity. All color drained from his face. "That's impossible," he said, voice brittle. "Is it?" He backed up a step, as if the truth was physical and heavy. She didn't flinch. "I didn't need your name then, but now that the world's watching, you sure wanted mine." His gaze was wild now, flickering between disbelief and panic. Somewhere deep inside, he already knew the truth. But denial was easier, safer. "Get a test," she said quietly. "Let's stop pretending." And just like that, the balance shifted. For the first time in his life, Damien Holt didn't feel powerful. He felt exposed. The silence in the clinic's waiting room felt heavier than the ticking clock on the wall. Damien sat stiffly in a leather chair, his fingers clenched around a manila envelope. On the seat beside him lay a crumpled newspaper, his face on the front page again. But this time the caption read less like power and more like prophecy. Fatherhood scandal, the empire he didn't see coming. Savannah sat across from him, calm and unmoved. Her hands rested on her belly, protective, proud. She hadn't said much since agreeing to the test. When Damien demanded it, his tone sharp, his pride clinging to the idea of doubt. She didn't flinch. She didn't even argue. She just gave him a long, unwavering stare and said, "Fine, let's get it in writing." Because she wasn't doing this for him. She was doing it for the child, for the legal clarity, for the future of someone who would carry both their blood, but shouldn't carry his shame. 2 days later, the results came in. A white envelope, a single page, 9.9% match. That one line shattered the armor Damien Holt had spent decades building. He didn't speak for almost an hour after reading it. His lawyers tried, offering options, damage control, NDA drafts, settlement packages, but he heard none of it. He just stared at the paper like it might change if he looked long enough. He was the father. And suddenly, everything was real. The night in Miami, the woman standing firm in a cheap apron while he humiliated her in public. The baby, his baby, growing inside her. He felt something he hadn't in years, small. When his legal team finally pushed the first draft of a settlement, across the table, he handed it to Savannah like it was a peace offering. It had everything: a multi-million-dollar payout, a penthouse trust, private health care, hush clauses tucked between generous perks. She didn't even glance at it. "I'm not signing that." He looked up, confused. "It's not a trap, it's security." "For who?" she shot back. "You want me to disappear again? Let you rewrite the story with a dollar sign?" "No," he said quickly, but the doubt was already on his face. She stood, her voice cool but burning with something deeper. "I'm not for sale. My child's not for sale. I don't need your charity. I just want one thing: respect. As a mother, as a woman, and as the person you pretended didn't exist." He said nothing. "You know where we stand now," she added, turning toward the door. "So act like it." And with that, she left him in the glass conference room with the truth in one hand and the price of dignity, one he couldn't buy, in the other. The DNA results were never supposed to go public, but nothing stayed private around Damien Holt for long. Within days, a leaked photo of the document began circulating on gossip sites and business blogs, followed by headlines that made his stomach twist: "Billionaire's baby scandal confirmed." Damien Holt, the father he denied. It was the second explosion, and this time there was no controlling the blast radius. Reporters camped outside Holt Media's headquarters. Commentators tore into his hypocrisy, mocking the man who humiliated a pregnant waitress, only to be proven her child's father. Late-night hosts turned his downfall into punchlines. Influencers uploaded side-by-side photos of his old interviews about honor and accountability, overlaying them with clips of Savannah's quiet dignity, and she still hadn't said a word. That silence, again, became power. Savannah didn't post, didn't retaliate, didn't show up on a single morning show, but her restraint said everything. While Damien's empire wobbled, she moved with grace, and the world followed. Brands began pulling out of sponsorship deals. Fashion labels distanced themselves. His face, once synonymous with media excellence, was now a warning. Internally, Holt Media's board grew restless. Shareholders called emergency meetings, and when whispers of a leadership vote reached his desk, Damien realized the storm wasn't just outside, it was coming for his throne. Then, quietly, something shifted. A blurry photo surfaced online. Damien, outside a modest city hospital, holding a bouquet of white lilies. No security detail, no press, just him, dressed down, head low, standing beside Savannah's mother's room. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't posing. He looked human. People took notice. The narrative began to soften. Some headlines changed tone. Is Damien Holt trying to make amends? Public sympathy, once a trickle, began to grow. He wasn't forgiven, but something about the image stuck. He looked ashamed, and in a world that rarely saw men like him admit fault, that mattered. For the first time, Damien wasn't trying to spin the story. He was just living in the wreckage of it. Damien showed up at Savannah's door one rainy Thursday evening, not with cameras or contracts, but with an umbrella and a question. "I want to be part of the child's life," he said, voice steady but soft. "Only if you'll allow." There was no arrogance in him anymore, no polished charm, just a man stripped down to the raw edge of truth. Savannah didn't answer right away. She studied him, searching for the usual agenda. But there was none. "If you're here for a performance," she warned, "don't bother." "I'm not," he replied. "I'm just showing up." And somehow that was enough. For now, he didn't try to insert himself all at once. He didn't make grand gestures. Instead, he started showing up in quieter places. Women's shelters around the city began receiving anonymous donations. Maternity rights programs quietly rolled out in Holt Media's HR policy. A generous childcare support clause appeared in new contracts. No press releases, no interviews, no fingerprints. He wasn't trying to fix his image, he was trying to fix him. Savannah noticed. She didn't comment, but she saw the shift. The man who once mocked her now waited outside prenatal appointments, without fanfare. He didn't walk her inside, he didn't hover, he just stood there, umbrella in hand, ready in case she needed a ride home. It wasn't romantic, and it wasn't some fairy tale redemption arc. It was real. Sometimes they talked about the baby, about parenting, occasionally about nothing at all, and slowly a fragile respect took root, born not from love, but from shared accountability, from the fact that they were two people bound by one truth. Neither could change. He didn't ask for forgiveness. She didn't offer it. But for the first time, Savannah could look him in the eye and not feel anger. She saw the man he was trying to become. And maybe, just maybe, that was enough for her child to one day know that even the broken can grow. The bookstore was warm with afternoon sunlight, the kind that made everything feel like a page from a picture book. Children crowded around a carpeted corner, wide-eyed and fidgety, while their parents hovered nearby, sipping coffee and glancing at their phones. In the center sat Savannah, her voice gentle yet animated, as she read aloud from her debut children's book, The Girl Who Carried the Sky. Beside her, in a little woven basket lined with a plush blanket, sat her son, almost one now, bright-eyed and full of mischief. He gripped a corner of the book with sticky fingers, babbling as if he understood every word. Savannah had changed, still herself, but lighter. There was a confidence in the way she held the story, the way she spoke. The publishing world had taken notice of her talent, not because of the scandal that once haunted her name, but because of her truth. Her ability to weave healing into pages meant for small hands and open hearts. And then, just as she turned the page to the final line, the bell above the bookstore door jingled. He entered quietly. Damien stood at the back for a moment, uncertain. He wore no suit, no entourage, just jeans, a navy sweater, and a look that balanced pride with caution. He didn't interrupt, didn't move closer, just slipped into an empty chair in the last row, hands folded tight. As Savannah closed the book, the baby turned. His eyes found Damien instantly. A slow smile bloomed across the boy's face. Recognition, pure and simple. He reached a chubby hand toward the back of the room, fingers flexing. Damien smiled, tentative, and raised his hand in return. A wave, not grand, not seeking, just present. Savannah caught the moment. Her gaze followed her son's hand, landing on Damien. Their eyes met, and for a second, everything stopped. No cameras, no headlines, no past, just two people connected by a child, one who carried the best and worst of both. Savannah gave a small nod. Not forgiveness, not yet, but something like peace. A silent agreement, a new chapter, and maybe, with time, the story would continue. Thank you for watching. Please subscribe to my channel so you never miss our future videos.